The first wave of horror came in May 1986. Over 3 days, the fathers of witdoeke systematically burnt 3 satellite squatter camps around Crossroads to the ground. The security forces then stepped in. They encircled the area with barbed wire to prevent the 30,000 left homeless by the attack from reoccupying the land. Lukhanyiso Finye and Vuyani Dyaboza were 2 of the 38 people left dead in the wake of the destruction. The young men and 4 friends were on their way to a Saturday night party when they were stopped by a witdoek barricade, abducted and killed. Their parents found them in a mortuary.
It looked as if we were in a butchery. It was full of blood. The bodies were lying on the blood. The shelves were full of bodies. When we went to another corner in the room, in the shelving, we looked on the floor and we saw my son lying in one corner. I want to say, listeners, that is one thing that has troubled me for the rest of my life, to find my son in that condition, having done nothing, killed innocently.
Their friend, Ruth Gibizela, survived. But it is here in the ruins of what was once a witdoek prison that she and others lived a night of terror.
These men asked if we could see the Red Sea. This here is the Red Sea. We looked at it, and when we looked, we saw the heads of people. The necks were severed from the body. The heads were on the one side, and the bodies on the other side. They were floating in the water. They said the best thing was to take us to Ngqobongwana. Ngqobongwana is the one who is going to explain what to do about them. Let us take them to Ngqobongwana. We went up with them and took off the tires. They took the tires and said, let us go to Ngqobongwana. Some said, let's go to Polsmoor. They must be taken to Polsmoor.
Former Detective Leonard Knipe investigated this double murder. It led him straight to this man, Johnson Ngqobongwana, who was found to be in charge of these secret township prisons where Ruth and others were held. Knipe arrested him.
During the early afternoon of the same day that Ngqobongwana appeared in court, I received a telephone call from an agitated Brigadier van der Westhuizen. I obviously no longer can remember the exact conversation between the Brigadier and myself, but the impression was that he had been severely rebuked because of our actions against Mr. Ngqobongwana, and that he had been instructed by either the State President or Minister to see to it that Ngqobongwana was released on bail. I was informed that the authorities were fully conversant with Ngqobongwana's court, that it was not a people's court but a tribal court. I was instructed to immediately see to it that Ngqobongwana was released on bail.
Ngqobongwana, a former UDF supporter, had been arrested a year earlier, and many believe he was turned to work for the state during his imprisonment. By 1986, Ngqobongwana was the main witdoek leader in Crossroads, now working against his former comrades. Their conflict came to a head when the state decided to upgrade Crossroads. This meant that the squatter camps had to be cleared and their people removed to Khayelitsha. But the people would not be moved. Does this explain the sudden and systematic attack in May and again in June, which left another 30,000 homeless?
Approximately 3 weeks into May 1986, the Legal Resources Centre was approached by leaders of the community that had been burnt out, and also by those who lived at KTC, who had witnessed this mass evacuation and had learnt via the grapevine that they were next in line.
The squatter leaders managed to have an urgent interim interdict granted against the police and witdoeke, preventing them from unlawfully entering KTC and destroying this remaining camp. Despite the interdict, KTC started burning on 9 June 1986.
Die 9 Junie 1986. Die tyd is nou 44 minute oor 9 in die oggend. Ons staan hier so te kruispad langs aan die administrasieraad. Voor ons 'n groot groep swarte saamgetrek. Dit is van die ouer garde. Hulle kan uitgeken word aan hulle wit kopdoeke en wit armbande wat hulle by hulle om hulle arms het. Major Ordeal nou tans besig om met die swartes te gesels of dit lyk asof steeds maandag die 9 Junie 1986. Die tyd is nou 14 minute oor 3 in die middag. Ons staan nou hierso te KTC kamp wat nog steeds brand wat almal aan die brand gesteek was deur die ouer garde. Kan nou gesien word hoe dat hulle nog dieper in KTC inbeweeg. Sover as wat hulle kom, steek hulle hitte en goed aan die brand. Dit is onmoontlik vir die polisie om hulle te keer, want hulle het al die hele gebied deursypel en
meneer die voorsitter, ek sal hulle kan bedwang gehou het as ek bereid was om hulle almal te skiet. Dan sal ek massas doodgeskiet en dan sal ek hulle in bedwang gehou het. Maar dit was ek nie bereid om te doen nie.
I quite clearly saw a burst of about 10 shots giving what the army called covering fire to witdoeke who went in underneath that fire so that the residents of KTC would take refuge and then the witdoeke would go in under cover of that fire and torch shirts. I don't know what they're charging me with, but I've witnessed...
You can talk later.
Okay.
What have you witnessed?
I've witnessed totally ineffective police action.
During the marathon 3-year court case, which more than 3,000 people brought against the police, they denied complicity with the witdoeke, and eventually no one was found guilty for the deaths and destruction. But this week, the Truth Commission heard this man, Ulrich Schnellhase, admit the links. During 1986, Schnellhase was charged with upgrading Crossroads.
May I say that your interests, the interests of the security forces and the interests of the witdoeke converged in a sense?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
And that all three groups would have done anything to make sure that the strategies you engage in facilitated the process. For you, the process would be development.
One could say that.
For the security forces, the goal would be to clear the area of comrades. And for the witdoeke to get rid of UDF-related allies, etc.
Yes, ma'am.
Crossroads, 11 years later, has survived the social engineering that scorched its people and its land. Today, people live and people die, but that's normal.